The twin suns of the alien world Tavros Prime burned bright over the dusty bazaar. Traders shouted in dozens of strange tongues, selling food that glowed, tools that floated, and creatures that chirped like bells. The air smelled of oil, metal, and something sweet that stung the nose. Humans rarely came here. It wasn't a place made for them. Among the crowd moved Ryan Cole, a human engineer from the Terran frontier. He had come to sell spare ship parts and maybe find supplies for his next jump. But what caught his eye that morning wasn't a bargain. It was smoke, thick, dark, and too heavy to be from a cooking stand. He followed it through the maze of stalls. The laughter grew louder, crueler. When he reached the open square, he froze. At the center of the crowd inside a metal cage were 6 small creatures. Their fur shimmered like starlight, and when they breathed, faint sparks glowed beneath their skin. They were alien puppies trembling and huddled together. Beside the cage stood a group of alien butchers, their claws sharp, their eyes red with greed. One of them held a long iron rod burning orange at the tip. "Fresh fire, pups," the alien shouted. "Best roast in the sector." The crowd roared with excitement. Ryan's stomach twisted. The little creatures whimpered softly, scared, confused, too young to understand. He saw one pup try to crawl away, pressing against the bars until its paw burned. The smell of singed fur filled the air. The aliens laughed harder. He could have walked away. Every off-worlder knew not to interfere with local customs. On Tavros Prime, laws were simple. Outsiders keep their distance. But Ryan couldn't move. His heart pounded as he stepped closer. "Stop that," he said, his voice calm but firm. The laughter faded. Dozens of glowing eyes turned toward him. The lead butcher sneered. He was twice Ryan's size, his arms covered in scars. "You speak human?" he growled. "You want to join the feast?" Ryan met his eyes. "They're alive," he said quietly. "Not food." The butcher's grin widened. "Alive, yes. That's what makes them tender." He jabbed the burning rod toward the cage, and the pups screamed. Ryan's fists clenched. "Let them go," the crowd murmured, amused. Someone shouted, "Let's see how brave the human really is." The butcher laughed, tossing the iron rod aside. He pointed toward a pit filled with flickering blue fire, the market's cooking flame. "You want them? Then prove your worth," he said. "Put your hand in the sacred flame. If you pull it out, they stay ours. If you don't..." He grinned wider. "They're yours, and maybe a new legend is born." The aliens cheered. Ryan's heart pounded. The flame wasn't ordinary fire. It shimmered with strange energy, hot enough to melt steel. He could feel the heat from several meters away. He looked at the pups again. One stared back at him, its small glowing eyes wide and wet. He took a step forward. "If that's what it takes," he said softly. The butcher's grin faded a little. He hadn't expected the human to agree. The crowd quieted, watching as Ryan walked to the pit. He knelt beside it. The blue fire danced like liquid lightning, whispering in an alien hum. Ryan took a deep breath. He knew what this meant in his skin, his hand, maybe worse. But he couldn't let those eyes haunt him later. He reached out slowly. The moment his fingers touched the flame, pain shot through his arm like a storm. It felt like every nerve was on fire. His skin blistered, but he didn't pull back. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The aliens watched in disbelief. No one had ever held their hand in the sacred flame for more than a heartbeat. Ryan's voice broke through the silence. "Now let them go." The butcher hesitated. The crowd waited. The human's arm trembled, but his hand stayed in the fire. The pups pressed against the bars, whimpering. Finally, the butcher raised his claw. "Release them," he growled. 2 smaller aliens opened the cage. The pups bolted out, running straight to Ryan. They huddled beside him, their glowing fur touching his burned hand. Ryan slowly pulled his hand from the flame. The skin was blackened, the pain sharp. But when one pup licked it gently, a faint golden light spread across the wound. The burning eased. The crowd began to whisper. Some mocked him, others looked uneasy. A few even bowed their heads. They had seen courage before, but never from a human. Ryan stood, cradling the trembling pups in his arms. "They're safe now," he whispered. As he turned to leave, a pair of eyes watched him from the shadows. A tall, alien woman cloaked in silver. Her gaze was not cruel like the others. It was curious, almost soft. She whispered to herself, "A human, with fire in his heart." And before Ryan disappeared into the crowd, she followed him silently, knowing that what she had just witnessed was not just kindness. It was the beginning of something far greater. The marketplace was silent. Even the usual shouts and laughter had vanished. Every alien eye was fixed on the human whose hand still glowed faintly from the sacred flame. Smoke curled from Ryan's skin, but he didn't flinch. The pups huddled against his leg, their soft glowing fur trembling as if they could feel his pain. The butcher's grin had faded into a tight sneer. "You should have screamed, human," he muttered. "That's what they all do." Ryan said nothing. His hand shook, but his eyes were steady. "You promised," he said quietly. "They're free." The butcher spat on the ground and waved his claw. "Take them, then. Get out before I change my mind." Ryan nodded once. He wrapped the tiny creatures in his torn jacket and turned to leave. The crowd parted slowly. No one spoke. Some stared at him with disgust, others with something that looked almost like respect. As Ryan walked through the narrow market alleys, the smell of smoke followed him. The pain in his hand grew sharper with every step, but he didn't care. The pups whimpered softly, curling closer to his chest. He whispered to them, "You're safe now, little ones. It's over." But it wasn't over. From behind the stalls, 3 of the butcher's men watched him. "He made us look weak," one hissed. "The boss will want his price back." They began to follow quietly through the twisting streets. Ryan didn't notice. He reached a quiet corner of the bazaar, where the smell of metal was replaced by cool, dusty air. He knelt and set the pups down. They sniffed around curiously, their tiny paws leaving faint glowing prints in the dirt. One of them looked up at him and let out a soft, almost musical sound. Ryan smiled weakly. "You're welcome," he murmured. Suddenly a shadow moved beside him. A tall figure stepped from between the stalls. The silver-cloaked woman who had been watching. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "They'll come for you soon." Ryan stood startled but not afraid. "You were watching," he said. "Why?" The woman lowered her hood. Her skin shimmered faintly blue under the twin suns, and her eyes were the color of molten gold. "Because no one defies the market laws and lives," she said. "But you didn't even hesitate." "They were going to burn them alive," Ryan said simply. "I couldn't let that happen." The woman tilted her head. "Even if it cost your hand?" Ryan looked at the blackened skin. "A hand heals. A life doesn't." For a moment, the alien said nothing. There was something unreadable in her golden eyes, part wonder, part confusion. Then she whispered, "Follow me, human, before they find you." He hesitated, but the pups nudged his leg as if agreeing. He followed her through narrow back alleys lit by dim blue lights. They moved fast and quiet, weaving between storage containers and old machines. Behind them, distant shouts echoed. The butchers had discovered his escape. They reached a rusted gate at the end of a forgotten tunnel. The woman pressed her palm to a glowing panel, and the door slid open with a hiss. "Inside," she said. Ryan stepped in, still clutching the pups. The door sealed behind them. Inside was a small laboratory filled with strange equipment, floating screens and glass tanks that held glowing plants. The air smelled faintly of ozone. The woman turned to him. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I'm a xenobiologist. I study living species across systems. Those pups you saved, and they're not simple animals." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" Lyra moved closer and gently touched one of the pups. It blinked and let out a soft tone, a sound that almost formed a word. "They are the last young of the Kareen, an ancient race once thought extinct. They were intelligent once, but hunted until only their children remained. Now the traders sell them as meat." Ryan's stomach turned. "So they were a people?" "Not pets," Lyra nodded sadly. "You did something few would dare. But now you've broken their law and they will come for you. You can't stay in the city." Ryan glanced down at the small glowing beings. They looked up at him with innocent trust. "Then I'll take them somewhere safe," he said. Lyra looked at him sharply. "You'd risk that? For creatures not even of your world?" Ryan gave a small smile. "Maybe that's exactly why. Because someone has to." Lyra's expression softened for the first time. "You're either brave or very foolish human." "Probably both," Ryan said. For a moment, silence filled the room. The faint hum of machines surrounded them. One of the pups yawned, curling beside his burned hand. As it touched his skin, a soft golden glow spread again, this time stronger. The burned flesh began to knit slowly, almost healing before Lyra's eyes. She gasped. "They're responding to you. They've never done that before." Ryan looked at the tiny creature, surprised. "Maybe they know I meant no harm." Lyra's gaze lingered on him. Perhaps they do, she said quietly. And perhaps the universe just changed a little because of it. Outside, a distant alarm echoed through the streets. The traders were closing in. Lyra turned sharply. They found us. If you truly want to protect them, you'll have to leave Tavros Prime tonight. Ryan took a deep breath and nodded. Then show me the way. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, filled with something like hope. Follow me, human. The story of what you did today is only beginning. And as the laboratory lights dimmed and the sounds of pursuit grew closer, Ryan held the tiny glowing pups tight against his chest, not knowing that his simple act of kindness would soon ignite a fire across the stars. The city of Tavros Prime never slept. Even at night, the glowing lights of alien signs shimmered through the mist, and the smell of metal and spice filled the narrow streets. But tonight something was different. The air carried a sense of danger. Ryan followed Lyra through the twisting alleys, clutching the small glowing pups close to his chest. Their tiny hearts beat fast against his arm and their light dimmed with fear. Lyra moved quickly, her silver cloak brushing against walls covered in alien graffiti. "Keep up," she whispered. "They're hunting you already." "I noticed," Ryan muttered, glancing behind him. Far back, shadows moved, the butchers and their enforcers. Their metal boots clanged against the ground. One shouted in a deep, ugly voice, "Find the human!" He cost us credits and pride. Lyra stopped near a junction and pressed a small sphere against the wall. It glowed, then opened a hidden passage leading into the old Undercity. "Inside quickly." Ryan ducked through and the wall sealed behind them. They found themselves in a dark tunnel lit by faint green crystals. The air was cold and damp, echoing with the sound of dripping water. "Where are we?" Ryan asked quietly. "The old sewer tunnels," Lyra said. "Abandoned for decades. Only smugglers and ghosts come here now." "Great," Ryan said, half smiling. "Just the kind of company I wanted." Lyra almost smiled back, but her golden eyes stayed serious. "You joke too easily for someone being hunted." Ryan shrugged. "If I stop, I'll start thinking about my hand." He unwrapped the jacket for a moment. The pups blinked up at him, their small eyes glowing faintly. One of them licked his fingers again, and to his surprise, the pain in his hand faded a little more. Lyra noticed. "They respond to you," she said softly. "You're connected to them somehow." "Maybe they just know I'm on their side," he replied. Before she could answer, a metallic thud echoed through the tunnels, the sound of heavy boots. Lyra's face went pale. They found the access point. Ryan grabbed the pups and followed as she ran deeper into the maze of tunnels. The lights flickered. Water splashed beneath their feet. The air grew hotter. The pursuers were using plasma torches to cut through barriers. Lyra took a sharp turn into a narrow passage that sloped downward. "There's an exit near the waste river," she said, breathing fast. "If we reach it, we can lose them in the crowd above." They ran for several minutes, the sounds of pursuit getting closer. The pups began to whimper again, their glowing fur lighting the way ahead. Suddenly, a sharp hiss filled the air. A laser bolt struck the wall beside Ryan's head, showering sparks. "Down!" Lyra shouted. Ryan ducked behind a pillar, clutching the pups. He saw 3 aliens approaching, the butcher's guards armed with stun rifles and chains. "There he is!" one shouted. "Take the human alive." Ryan looked around quickly. The tunnel had collapsed ahead, no way forward. He turned to Lyra. "Any ideas?" She hesitated, then pointed upward. "There's a vent shaft. If you can reach it." Before she could finish, another shot rang out. Ryan pushed her aside and dove behind a crate. The pups squealed in fear. He took a deep breath. "All right," he whispered. "Time to make a distraction." He grabbed a piece of metal pipe lying nearby and threw it down the tunnel. The clang echoed loudly, making the guards turn. "Over there!" one shouted. Ryan used the moment to lift the pups into the vent shaft. "Go on," he urged. They climbed quickly, their tiny paws glowing in the dark. Then he looked at Lyra. "Your turn." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll cover you." She hesitated for only a moment before climbing up. Ryan turned back just as the guard spotted him. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, burning through his shirt. He gritted his teeth and picked up another pipe, swinging it hard at the nearest guard. The impact knocked the alien back with a growl. The second guard lunged, but a sudden flash of light stopped him. The pups above had begun to glow brightly, sending streaks of golden energy through the tunnel. The guard screamed, blinded by the light. Ryan didn't understand what was happening, but he didn't wait to question it. He climbed up into the vent and pulled the grate closed behind him. They crawled through the narrow shaft until they reached an opening that led out onto a quiet rooftop overlooking the sleeping city. Ryan lay there, breathing hard. His body hurt, his hands still burned, but the pups cuddled against him, warm and alive. Clara sat beside him, her cloak torn, her golden eyes watching the horizon. "You risked your life again," she said quietly. "Why?" Ryan looked at the small glowing creatures. "Because they would have done the same for me," he said softly. Lyra stared at him for a moment, then looked away, hiding a strange expression. "You humans. You make no sense." "Maybe," Ryan said with a tired smile. "But sometimes not making sense is the only way to do what's right." Far below, the shouts of the traders faded into the night. The two moons hung high above, their light reflecting off the metal rooftops. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment, unaware that this escape was only the beginning, and that the bond between him, Lyra, and the alien pups was about to change the fate of more than one world. The night was quiet now, and the glowing city below them looked peaceful, but Ryan knew that peace was only on the surface. Danger still waited in every shadow. He sat on the rooftop beside Lyra, his burned hand wrapped in cloth, the pups curled against his side. Their faint golden light flickered gently, like small stars resting on his arm. Lyra had said little since they escaped. She stared at the moons, her cloak fluttering softly in the wind. Ryan finally broke the silence. "You still haven't told me why you helped me," he said. Lyra turned her gaze toward him. Her golden eyes seemed to hold 100 thoughts. "Because what you did, it shouldn't have been possible," she said softly. "No human, no alien would endure sacred flame for creatures they just met. I had to see who you were." Ryan shrugged lightly. "I just couldn't stand there and watch. Pain is temporary. Regret lasts longer." A faint smile crossed her lips, the first real one he had seen. "You speak like someone who's seen both." Ryan didn't answer. The pups stirred, pressing closer, their warmth comforting. One of them yawned, releasing a tiny spark of light that danced upward and disappeared into the night air. Lyra's eyes followed it. "You don't understand what you've done," she said at last. "Those pups, they are not just rare. They are forbidden." Ryan frowned. "Forbidden? Why?" Lyra hesitated before answering. "Because they belong to a species the galaxy tried to erase, the Kareen. Long ago, they were one of the first intelligent races to explore the stars. Peaceful, gentle, gifted in energy manipulation. They used emotion, not machines, to power their cities. They could turn light into warmth, pain into healing." She looked down at the pups. "But their light made others jealous. Empires rose against them. The Kareen refused to fight. They believed compassion could stop war. It didn't. Their worlds were burned and their young were captured. For centuries, what remained of them was hidden or destroyed." Ryan felt his chest tighten. "And these are the last?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. The traders don't even know what they have. To them, they're just animals that glow when scared. They never knew these pups carry fragments of memory, memories of their entire race." Ryan's eyes widened. "You mean they remember?" "In a way," Lyra said. "They don't think like us. But when they bond with someone, they share feelings, images, pieces of their past. That's how the Kareen survived, hidden inside their young." Ryan looked at the small creatures sleeping peacefully. Then saving them wasn't just saving lives. It was saving a history. Lyra nodded slowly. "Exactly. And that's why the traders, and the Empire, will come for you now. You touched something they fear. Compassion stronger than power." He stared at her. "You sound like you know this from experience." Lyra looked away. "I was once part of the Empire's science division," she said. "My job was to study rare species, and find ways to weaponize them. When I discovered what the Kareen truly were, I refused to continue. I escaped, took what little data I could, and hid here. But without proof, no one would believe me." Ryan's voice softened. "So when you saw me at the market, I saw someone willing to do what I couldn't," she said quietly. Someone who didn't hesitate. Ryan didn't know what to say. He simply looked at the pups, at their small glowing forms, their innocent trust. "Then maybe we can prove it together," he said finally. "You said there's a way, right? To show the galaxy what they really are?" Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "There's a place, much far north beyond the desert, The Temple of Fire, built by the Korean themselves. The Empire sealed it long ago, but legend says it still holds their final message. If we can reach it, maybe their truth will be heard again. Ryan smiled faintly. Sounds like a good plan. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You realize the desert is lethal and patrol ships watch the skies. Yeah, Ryan said with a small grin. But you're the scientist and I'm the engineer. Between the two of us, we can manage a little sand. For a moment, silence filled the air again, but this time it was peaceful. Lyra looked at him, really looked, as if trying to understand how someone so simple could carry so much courage. The pups stirred again, their light pulsing softly. One of them climbed onto Ryan's shoulder and stared straight at Lyra. A warm glow spread around her and she gasped quietly. Images flickered in her mind. Tall crystal towers, blue skies filled with gentle voices, laughter, then sudden fire and screams. Tears welled in her golden eyes. They're showing me, she whispered. Their last memories. Ryan reached out, steadying her hand. Then we can't let that be forgotten, he said. Lyra blinked away her tears and nodded firmly. No, we won't. Below, sirens wailed faintly, a reminder that the city still hunted them. Lyra stood and adjusted her cloak. We move at dawn, she said. The desert won't wait, and neither will the Empire. Ryan nodded, standing with the pups nestled safely in his jacket. The stars above shimmered brighter, and for the first time since he arrived on Tavros Prime, he felt a strange pull, as if fate itself had chosen him. Lyra looked at him one last time. You may not realize it yet, human, but you've just started something much bigger than saving a few lives. Ryan smiled softly. Then let's make sure it ends right. And as the first light of dawn touched the alien rooftops, the human, the scientist, and the last children of the Korean began their journey toward a destiny written in both fire and compassion. The twin suns rose over the desert like two blazing eyes, flooding the world with heat and light. The dunes stretched endlessly in every direction, golden waves shifting under a wind that burned like fire. Ryan had never seen a place so vast and empty. It felt alive, whispering secrets through every gust of sand. He walked beside Lyra, both wrapped in dusty cloaks. The alien pups rested inside a travel crate Ryan had rigged together from scrap metal and cloth. They glowed faintly, their soft light like a heartbeat in the endless desert. Lyra glanced at the horizon. 3 days' walk to the northern ruins, she said. If we move fast, we'll reach the canyon by nightfall. Ryan shielded his eyes from the sun. 3 days in this heat? You're joking. Her golden eyes glimmered behind her veil. Humans asked for adventure. This is it. He gave a tired grin. Yeah, but my boots didn't sign up for this. They kept walking. The air shimmered around them, turning shapes into mirages, twisted shadows that looked like towers or moving creatures. The wind carried strange whispers like voices lost to time. Ryan tried to ignore them, but the pups began to whimper softly. Their glow dimmed and one buried its face in his hand. Lyra noticed. They feel something, she murmured. This desert remembers what happened here. Ryan frowned. What happened? This was once Korean land, she said. When the Empire came, their last cities were burned. The sand still carries their ashes. Ryan fell silent. The thought that he was walking over the graves of an entire people made the air feel heavier. Hours passed. The suns climbed higher and the heat grew cruel. Sweat stung Ryan's eyes and his burned hand throbbed with every step. Lyra moved ahead, scanning the horizon with a small device. Suddenly it beeped and she stopped. What is it? Ryan asked. Something underground, she said. A power reading and faint but old. Could be a supply vault. They followed the signal to a half-buried structure. Ryan brushed away the sand to reveal a rusted hatch. It's sealed, he said, tapping it. But I might be able to open it. Using a tool from his belt, he pried open the old lock. The hatch creaked and released a puff of stale air. Inside was a small chamber, cool and dark, lined with ancient machinery. They climbed down. The temperature dropped instantly and Ryan sighed in relief. The pups chirped happily, their glow brightening again. Lyra studied the walls. Strange symbols glowed faintly under her scanner. Korean script, she whispered. This is part of their old travel network. Ryan ran his hand along the metal. Still working? Barely, she said. But maybe enough to help us. In the corner, Ryan found a water filtration unit. After a few adjustments, he managed to get a slow drip of clean water. He filled their bottles and splashed his face, feeling alive again. Guess I'm not just an engineer for nothing. Lyra smiled faintly. You're full of surprises, human. They rested for a while. Ryan watched the pups play near a dim light source, chasing tiny dust motes in the air. One of them climbed onto his shoulder and looked at him curiously. Suddenly, his vision blurred. He saw flashes, tall glowing towers, blue skies, and beings of light walking hand in hand. Then fire, screams, the same towers collapsing, a child's voice crying. When he blinked, it was gone. He gasped and looked at Lyra. I saw something, he said. A memory. Their world. Before it burned. Lyra's expression turned serious. It's happening sooner than I expected, she said quietly. They're bonding with you. You're seeing through their light? Ryan touched the pup gently. Then maybe they're trying to tell us something. They are, Lyra said. And we'll understand it when we reach the temple. Before they could rest longer, a low hum filled the air. Ryan tensed. That doesn't sound friendly. Lyra checked her scanner and cursed under her breath. A skimmer. Imperial Patrol, and they've picked up our trail. Ryan grabbed the crate. How close? Too close. They climbed out of the chamber just as a dark ship cut through the sky, kicking up a storm of sand. Bolts of plasma struck the ground near them, spraying dust and fire. Ryan grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her behind a rock formation. The pups squealed in fear. Ryan whispered, It's okay, stay down. Lyra looked at the horizon and pointed. There, the storm wall. If we can reach it, their sensors won't track us, they ran. The sandstorm loomed like a living wall, swirling in shades of red and gold. The ship fired again, but the blast missed, melting patches of sand into glass. Ryan pushed through the storm first, holding the pups close. The wind roared in his ears, tearing at his cloak. Lyra followed, nearly losing her footing, but Ryan caught her hand. Together, they stumbled through until the sound of engines faded behind them. When the storm finally passed, they found themselves in a quiet valley filled with strange crystal stones that glowed faintly under the dimming suns. Ryan dropped to his knees, exhausted. We made it, he breathed. Lyra looked at him with tired admiration. You're stubborn, human, he smiled faintly. I've been called worse. The pups gathered around them, glowing brighter again, their small voices humming softly. Lyra looked at them, her eyes filled with awe. They're guiding us now, she said. They know the way. Ryan looked at the endless dunes ahead. Then let's follow their light, he said softly. And as night fell across the burning desert, 3 figures, one human, one alien, and a group of glowing pups, began the next part of their journey, following the faint golden trail left by a forgotten race that still whispered in the wind. The night sky above the desert shimmered with 2 pale moons, their light casting silver waves across the dunes. Ryan and Lyra stood on a high ridge, their cloaks torn, their faces covered in dust. Below them, half buried in glowing sand, stood a structure that seemed too perfect to be real. Tall spires of glass-like stone, still burning faintly with red and gold light. Lyra's voice was soft, almost trembling. There it is, she whispered. The Temple of Fire. The last home of the Kareen. Ryan gazed at the temple, awe in his eyes. The walls pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that had never truly stopped. How can it still be alive after centuries? Lyra shook her head. Because it's not built from stone, she said. It's built from memory. The pups leapt from Ryan's arms and ran ahead, their paws glowing as they touched the sand. With each step, symbols appeared beneath them. Soft, burning marks that shimmered like starlight. Ryan followed, holding Lyra's hand to keep her steady as they descended the dune. The closer they got, the warmer the air became. The temple's gates loomed tall and covered in carvings of creatures made of fire and light. The smallest pup barked softly, and the massive doors began to shift, releasing a deep melodic hum. Ryan looked at Lyra. It's reacting to them. Lyra nodded, her voice hushed. To them, or to you. The doors opened slowly, revealing a vast chamber glowing with a dim amber light. Inside, the air felt thick, not with dust but with emotion. Ryan could feel it. Sadness, fear, hope, all mixed together like the breath of ghosts that refused to fade. They stepped inside. The floor was covered in glass-like tiles that flickered under their feet. Strange structures rose from the ground, part machine, part sculpture. At the center stood a great stone altar surrounded by circular mirrors that reflected the light of the pups as they wandered the room. Lyra placed her hand on one of the mirrors. "These are memory conduits," she whispered. "The Kareen stored their history here, waiting for someone who could awaken it." Ryan frowned. "Then let's try." He walked to the altar, his burned hand tingling as he touched it. The instant his skin made contact, the room filled with light, blinding and alive. The mirrors turned like wheels and voices filled the air. Countless overlapping whispers that merged into a single, gentle tone. A holographic image appeared. A tall being made of living flame, its eyes warm and full of sorrow. "To whoever finds this temple," the voice said, "know that we did not fall because of weakness. We fell because we believed too strongly in mercy." Lyra's eyes widened. "It's them. A Kareen elder." The being continued, its form flickering. "If you carry our children, then you carry our legacy. Protect them. Teach them that kindness is not foolishness, and it is the only fire that never dies." Ryan's heart pounded. The pups had gathered around him, their bodies glowing brighter until their light touched his chest. His mind filled with images, not words, but feelings. He saw cities that floated in the air, laughter that made the air shimmer, and finally the darkness that came when the Empire's fleets descended. He staggered, breathing hard. Lyra caught him by the shoulders. "What did you see?" "The end," he whispered, "and—" "Their forgiveness," Lyra frowned. "Forgiveness? For who?" "For everyone," Ryan said. "Even the ones who destroyed them." Before she could respond, a deep rumble shook the temple. Outside, engines roared, the sound of ships descending. The Empire had found them. Lyra's eyes widened. "They tracked our energy signature." Ryan looked at the pups. "We can't let them take this place. This is their history, or their home." The pups huddled together, glowing so brightly that the floor began to vibrate. Lyra shouted over the rising hum. "They're activating the temple's defense systems." Columns of flame burst from the walls, forming a ring around the altar. The air trembled as the temple itself seemed to awaken. Outside, soldiers shouted as the sand turned molten beneath their feet. Ryan shielded Lyra with his arm. "They're not attacking," he realized. "They're protecting us." Lyra's eyes filled with wonder. "They recognize you as one of their own." Ryan turned back toward the altar. "Then let's finish what they started." He pressed his burned hand to the glowing stone once more. The temple pulsed brighter than before, sending a beam of golden light into the sky, a signal that pierced the clouds and reached the stars. In that moment, every communication channel across the system filled with the same message, the voice of the Kareen elder echoing across worlds. "Mercy is not weakness. Compassion is not defeat. Remember the light." The Empire ships paused mid-air, their systems flickering from the pulse. Lyra stared in disbelief. "You've broadcasted their final words to the galaxy," she whispered. "They can't hide the truth anymore." Ryan stepped back, exhausted, his arm trembling. The pups gathered around him, their light now calm and warm. The temple's glow softened, the danger fading as silence returned. Lyra touched his shoulder gently. "You did it, Ryan," he smiled faintly. "No, we did it." Above them, the desert wind carried away the echoes of the ancient voice. The stars shimmered brighter, and for the first time in centuries, the Kareen were remembered not as myths or food, but as a people of light. Ryan looked at the pups, their tiny eyes reflecting the golden glow of the temple. "They're free now," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "And so are we." Outside, the suns began to rise again, casting warm light across the ruins. The Temple of Fire stood tall, alive once more, its heart beating in rhythm with the man who dared to risk everything for creatures no one else believed mattered. The first light of dawn spilled across the desert, painting the dunes gold and crimson. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of the Empire's ships scattered across the sands, their hulls melted by the temple's energy surge. The silence that followed was not one of death but of awe. The world itself seemed to pause, listening to the echo of the ancient message still ringing in the air. Ryan stood at the temple's entrance, his cloak torn and covered in dust. His burned hand, once blackened and raw, now shimmered faintly with golden patterns that pulsed softly, matching the heartbeat of the pups around him. Lyra stood beside him, her golden eyes watching the horizon where the Empire fleet had retreated. "They're gone," she whispered. "You did it." Ryan shook his head slowly. "No, they did it." He looked down at the glowing pups clustered near his feet, their small bodies humming with warmth. I just helped them finish what they started. The temple behind them continued to glow faintly, its once dim walls now alive with light. The carvings of the Koreans shimmered, showing scenes of their past, not their destruction but their beauty. For the first time in centuries, the Temple of Fire was awake again. Lyra turned to him, her voice quiet but full of emotion. You changed everything, Ryan. You gave the Korean back their voice. The Empire can't erase them anymore. Ryan smiled faintly. Guess compassion travels faster than a warship. Lyra's lips curved in a small, tired smile. You humans, always making jokes at the edge of history. He laughed softly, then winced as his shoulder ached from the fight. That's how we survive. We laugh, we hurt, and we keep walking. The pups began to circle him, glowing brighter. Their light touched his skin, and he felt something stir deep within. Warmth, calm, and then a vision. He saw the Korean as they once were, tall beings of living flame walking among stars. They looked at him, their voices blending into one. The fire of life burns in all hearts that choose mercy over hate. You carry that flame now. The vision faded and Ryan blinked. The golden patterns on his hand glowed stronger, spreading slowly across his arm. Lyra noticed and stepped closer, astonished. They're leaving their mark on you, she said softly. You've become part of their legacy. Ryan looked at his hand, then at the pups. Then I'll carry it with honor. Lyra's voice trembled slightly. You already have. They spent the morning gathering what little they had. Ryan salvaged a few tools and sealed the temple's inner gate. The pups watched him carefully, their glowing eyes following every move. When he was done, one of them climbed onto his shoulder and nuzzled his neck. Lyra watched the moment quietly, then said, What will you do now? Ryan looked at the rising suns. Find somewhere safe for them. Maybe build something new. A home where no one hunts, no one burns, no one fears. Lyra tilted her head. You'd stay here? On a world that nearly killed you? He smiled. The galaxy doesn't change overnight. But someone has to start the fire somewhere. For a moment, Lyra just stared at him, the strange human who had done what no one else dared. She felt something stir in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. You humans are dangerous, she said quietly. Not because of your weapons, but because of your hearts, Ryan chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment, she smiled faintly. It is. As the day grew brighter, the temple began to hum again. The energy within it stabilized, forming a faint ring of light that surrounded the valley. Lyra turned toward the sound. It's protecting itself, she said. The temple's energy is sealing the site. No one else will be able to enter without your signature. Ryan blinked. My what? The light recognized you as its guardian, she explained. To the Korean, you are now part of the fire. Ryan looked around, at the glowing sand, the temple walls, and the pups curling at his feet. Then I guess I have a new family, he said softly. Lyra stepped closer. Not just a family, a future. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of ozone and heat. The pups lifted their heads, their glow pulsing in rhythm. Above, the clouds parted, and a single beam of golden light broke through, shining directly onto Ryan and Lyra. The temple responded with a deep, melodic tone, almost like a song of thanks. Lyra looked at him. They're singing to you. Ryan smiled, his voice low. Maybe they're singing with us. The suns rose higher, and for a long moment neither spoke. The human, the alien, and the glowing children of a lost race stood together, proof that mercy could outshine cruelty, that one hand in the fire could ignite a light powerful enough to reach the stars. As they began to walk away, the smallest pup paused and looked back at the temple. Its light flickered once like a heartbeat before following after Ryan. Lyra glanced over her shoulder. Do you think anyone will believe this story? Ryan laughed softly. Doesn't matter. The truth doesn't need believers. It just needs to burn bright enough to be seen. And as they disappeared into the horizon, the Temple of Fire glowed one last time, a monument to compassion, courage, and the strange, stubborn fire that only humans seem to carry in their hearts. It was said later across the farthest colonies that a human once walked through flame and came out shining, not as a conqueror but as a guardian of light. And wherever kindness was shown in dark times, the Korean flame flickered again, whispering through the stars. The fire of humanity never dies.